Well, hello everybody, and you're expecting Nicole, and instead it's me and Becca and Kat. So you're going to get what you're going to get, and that's what that's what it comes down to. So,
Look
good
out.
morning, everybody. Welcome to the Artist Forge. Becca, Kat, how are you this morning?
Doing
Yep,
well.
me too.
Yeah, I have two drinks going, and I just reminded a few minutes ago that my coffee mug is inappropriate for public viewing. So I'm just gonna work
How is that? What's the shape of it?
What?
my green juice.
You didn't catch her very friendly coffee mug?
And we're banned. Um,
Sorry,
that's
Zach.
that's fantastic. I need that on the bottom of everything. I need that on my phone. I just
It's
all right
lots
there.
of fun when you forget and you're on Zoom calls with clients, and you're just like, "Oh, sorry."
That's when you pick up your other cup and it just says "Suck it up, Buttercup" on the bottom, and they want to complain. They complain. I'm probably not doing Nicole much justice here right now, but it is what it is. So, good morning. It is what's today? Monday,
Monday.
Sunday, Friday, Thursday. Bassam is saying that he's here. He's just setting up for a shoot. He may join us later. I think after he witnesses what happens here, he'd probably be best for his career to just step back a little bit. And the aspect ratio of everything, I'm going to zoom out.
Yeah, can you do that? I feel
So
like
don't
I'm all like, "Hey."
I know, right? So originally, good morning, Crystal. We were supposed to be talking about visual literacy and facial expression and all of that today. I know that's what Nicole had on the agenda, but while the Nicole is away, the others will play. And I thought it might be a chance for us to just take a break from visual literacy for a minute and kind of see what everybody's up to. I know that we haven't really had a chance to catch up outside of these 5 minute small talk things at the beginning of some of these conversations, but we haven't really had a chance to catch up on what everybody's doing. Like, for real, other than like, yeah, I had a good weekend or I didn't sleep last night or whatever. But I really want to get to the like, what are you guys up to now? Kat, I know you've been talking about going through this big restructure and putting new things in place and all that, and it seems to be soup to nuts. Like, are you just revamping everything in the business, or is it enhancing it? What are you doing?
Well, the answer is yes.
Yes.
So we're looking at a CRM platform that we're testing, and I don't really want to, talk about the brand of it yet until
Right.
I've decided whether or not it does everything that it says it can.
Right.
Because the idea behind it is that yes, it's a CRM like a Honeybook or a Dubsado, but it also covers your website. It covers text and email newsletter campaigns and all of the things that we have. All of these, like I was doing QuickBooks this weekend, which always makes me sad. And looking at all of these different subscriptions that I pay for, da 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 every single month, and this houses all of it. So it would actually save us something like almost $3,000 a year if it actually executes well. Now, the downside is the setup on it is massive, right? So my assistant and I are just kind of going through, their training videos and like setting things up piece by piece. But once that infrastructure is there, right? Like then those systems and processes, like I can drop off all of those subscriptions, have a completely new website that is functional and enhances and supports the client success experience with the studio and my ability to interact with them and communicate. Like I won't have to be like, okay, well, try texting from this number. And then if that doesn't work, follow up with an email and then call and blah, 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 blah. Like it's all done from one space. Like even down to where you can have, like, if you are using your phone, say you're not at the studio, right? I can set up a number that's tied to my cell phone without it actually being my cell phone number, and text and communicate with clients, and they don't know any different, right? Like they don't have my personal number, but they can communicate either with me or with the studio coordinator or whomever. So, like, it's kind of an overhaul, but at the same time, like, the expediency and efficacy in which we can execute the triple E, the E cubed, if
It's
you will,
nice.
will be pretty fantastic. Not to mention time savings, like once it's all put together.
Yeah, and you know, I've heard you mention this about when you're training associates and stuff too, is that it's all the front end load that takes all the time, right? It's thinking through, what do I really do for a process? What do I really need that experience to look like with a client or with my associates or with my employees, whatever it is. Like there's all of this stuff that a lot of times we just do automatically. We don't think about it, right? Because we set it up years ago and we've just kind of worked all these workarounds. It's like this river carving through mud, and it kind of makes its own little tributaries, and you get to the end of it and everything's flowing and everything works. When you want to revamp that and improve it, you have to go back and think, oh God, what did I do? How does this all link together? How did I do this? Is this the best way to go about it? Or is there a new method that I can use in my systems to make it easier to text somebody or get a phone call or get a voicemail, right? I've been using Google Voice for ever, 10, 12 years, however long it's been out. So I've always had that number that people could call and it would get forwarded to the studio. Well, the problem is, like, as that goes away or I stop using that, if I shift it, now what do? Do I use another service? I don't really love Google Voice. It's just I set it up 10 years ago and never thought about it again, right? So I think that happens a lot with a lot of our CRM systems, a lot of what we do in the studio. We just kind of set it up once out of, I've got to get this going.
Mhm.
And then we never really step back and say, all right, is this the best thing for me? Is it the best thing for my customers? My company's grown. Does it keep up with that? So how often do you think that you go about this type of reflection? Is it yearly? Is it every couple of years? Is it when you feel that itch or find something new?
I think it's pretty terrific to plan to at least look at your systems quarterly.
Yeah.
You know, even if it's from a bird's eye view, right? Like, okay, everybody seems to be moving through this process, like so on and so forth. But you know, your sales and or client experience will show you immediately where you have a loophole.
Right.
Like eyes closed happens every single time. If you've got a hiccup, like it's going to show up and it's going to show up fast. So when those flags kick, like obviously you have to address it immediately. I was speaking with a student maybe Saturday. Yeah, I think it was Saturday. And you know, they had this experience. They were compromising on their systems because they knew the client. They were acquaintances or friends or something. And like our desire to want to accommodate people will lead us to compromising our systems. And then all of a sudden, every single time when you compromise on a system, you are left at the control of the client and their desires and their expectations versus being in control of your system and your process. So every time one of those flags shows up, whether it's during your bird's eye review or not, like you have to take a look and say, okay, where is this pain point coming from?
Mhm.
Right? Oh, well, I sent them a gallery because they didn't like Zoom. Y'all, we've been in a pandemic for 2.5 years now. Like everybody and their mother knows how to use Zoom. But then it's, well, I don't have time to look at this right now. I'll get to it next week. Well, now all of a sudden you're left to not being able to have that in-person sales session because now you've sent them a gallery and you're on their timeline instead of them being on yours. When you compromise on your systems, like every single time it's going to smack you in the face with a fish, like just hands down.
I feel so
But-
attacked. I feel so attacked.
But, you know, when you take the opportunity to revisit your systems and your processes, to look to see how you've evolved in your process and to keep up, like I've got the studio coordinator now, not just completing systems and processes in a written format, but recording Loom videos to walk somebody through those systems and processes, right? Because if I have to train somebody else to be in their position, if I personally have to train them, that's going to suck up all of my time and energy for months. But if I can have them passively train and then be a part of that conversation, then I'm not using as much of my time and energy in that. And therefore, the components that are meaningful to me, and I can still have energy and time left over for clients.
Yeah, it's God, everything in there. I was just like, oh, I'm taking hits. I'm taking body shots. I'm like, Kat's hitting me with everything. Because there's been several things that have happened in the past, I don't know, probably 2 or 3 months that are exactly what you're talking about. I found a lot of my systems breaking down, not because of the processes that are in place, but my approach to them, becoming lazy, taking things for granted. Oh, this is just going to work, right? So I'm also looking at a new CRM and going back towards all the systems, like the physical systems that I have in place, but also thinking about what I'm doing with clients when I'm talking to them, when I'm educating them. Are they getting the information that they need? Am I talking about pricing? Am I putting too much on them and not serving the way that I'm supposed to? What is it that I'm doing in conjunction with the physical systems that is working and not working? And so for the past couple of months, as I've been doing the housework, and it's got me thinking about all this kind of very linear task-oriented stuff, I started looking at my own system saying, wow, I'm not doing what I normally do with clients with the same zeal and enthusiasm that I did a year ago. And the difference is so apparent between the income, the experience, everything, when you stop following your systems and processes.
Well, even your ability to connect with them, right? Like,
Total,
if
100%.
you're like backtracking to come up and meet all of these expectations that you've set, but you don't really have the time or the energy for it, and you've let these other pieces fall through the cracks in the process, like, all you're doing is a backpedal. And another way to look at how you view those systems and processes and any restructuring or even tweaking that needs to happen is to not just look at it from a current viewpoint, but what opportunities could be coming down the pike for you, right? And how can you solidify your process today so that you're able to take advantage of those opportunities? Because if you're not in a solid space, then guess what?
Yeah.
Like, then it's going to be like, oh, I wish I could, but I just don't really have the time to put it together right now. And it's because every opportunity worthwhile seems to come with it, a deadlift. And it's that first lift that you're just like, right? But if you go ahead and train, then that first lift isn't nearly as heavy.
You're throwing
you can move
uppercuts
with like ease and grace instead of like, holy shit, I got to be able to do this thing. Like, you don't want to be in a constant frantic state. I'm so sick of living that way.
Yeah, and that's generally what I know. Like, you're throwing haymakers at Becca and I can't even dodge. Like, it's really funny. So Becca, I'll turn over. You're laughing. Like, what are the things that are ringing true for you, or is it just all of it?
I'm just stab right into my brain. Thanks, Kat. I mean, you guys know, like, I'm in like a perpetual state of chaos, largely because I work from home with small children in my house, and I lie to myself about developing systems and schedules, and none of it works. But in how many days? 15 days. 15 days. There's no more small children in my house all day. So we're gonna work on some systems. But I actually have been looking. I have a situation right now where I'm realizing I didn't systematize things with my own priorities at the top of the system, and it's proving to be problematic, where I need to address how I do that in the future. So, like, definitely I've been sitting here for the last like couple days, maybe a week or so, just like, okay, how can I do this better next time? So exactly that, I have that energy and that time and that mental space to not be in a perpetual state of panic, but instead to be like, nope, all the T's are crossed, I's are dotted, we're good, I don't have to worry about it, it is what it is. So
Now Now, you guys, I know, Kat, you're a big journal person, big list person. Becca, I don't know, are you a digital list person or a written list person or post-its or just
I
Or
keep a
it's just
journal.
in my brain.
It
here?
mostly in my brain, except that is, a recipe for disaster. I use an app called Todoist on my phone, and it syncs with Gmail. And I like it because it's like the simplest thing in the world. It's literally like I click it, I make the note, I click the note leaves, and I don't have to go through a whole process to organize. I do keep a written journal though. So any spur of the moment thoughts, or if I need to like get a whole fleshed out thought out of my head and like actually write something, if I got to sketch something, whatever, I keep a moleskin all the time.
Mhm. Yeah, I float between all the things, right? If I can have a list, then I'm great. I've got legal pads and I've got journals and I use monday.com and Evernote and notes and Gmail. Like I've got all the things. But all I'm doing is condensing. Like I've got this list here that's just nothing but pages of things to do, right? Could be anything from send this email to build an edition, could be anything. And then I'll shorten that to like what has to happen on Sunday. And then I'll take that and I'll put that in a digital. I'm spending more time making the actual list than I am doing the effing task, right? So it's this guise of trying to be organized, and really it's just delaying pain, right? That's all I'm doing. Like the more I can organize it, the less painful it's going to be. And I'm still not doing the deadlift, Kat. I'm not doing that one lift and training, right? So I think, where I'm going with this, we don't have to spend an hour on systems and processes and how Becca and I are both failing at everything. Is like, I think it's important to really kind of step back every now and again, no matter how things are looking, right? Kat, you said quarterly. I'm lucky if I do it on a sweeping scale once a year. But you can absolutely tell when things are not going right. You're not getting inquiries, or commissions aren't coming in, or you're chasing down invoices, or something's going on in the business that isn't right. It's like when your car is not running right, and only you can feel it because you know your car so intimately. You know when there's a new rattle or a sound, you take it to someone, they're like, I don't hear anything. But you know that there is disaster looming, right? And I think as long as you're tuning up the systems every now and again, everything runs pretty well. And I see the debate coming, and I'll hand it over.
It's not a debate. It's not a debate. I think there is something to be said for creating your systems and processes for where you are today, where you want to be, and then the ideal, right? And when you're creating those systems and processes, or even a pricing menu, or how you answer the phone, like whatever it is, right? Based on not where you are today, but understanding like you got to start somewhere. Like Nicole says, you got to be willing to suck at it for a while, right? But try and create those systems and processes based on your priorities, like Becca was saying earlier, at the helm, and then where you want to be, right? So when we're starting, like in photo, just as an example, because that's the space I live in, it's like, okay, I need to have a pricing menu, and I want to offer hair and makeup, and I want to photograph them for an hour, right? And then you realize, oh, well, maybe instead of tying it to time, right? Because you're trying to meet that hour or 3 hours or whatever it is. Instead of trading it for time, the number of looks, right? Because I know in the back of my head, if I'm going to make a sale, I have to have a variety of imagery for them to choose from. Right. Well, and then you're like, okay, well, the 5 looks, oh my God, that takes me like 4 hours. Okay. Then you work on your efficacy, right? So that you can do 5 looks in an hour and a half, 2 hours, whatever it is. And then you work on your frame count to get that down so your culling time is easier, right? And so then you're adjusting those systems just based on what you're experiencing, but understand like your ability to comprehend what that means will evolve as you grow in your business. Does that make sense?
I think so. Yeah. I mean, I was trying to equate everything to what it is that I do on a day-to-day basis. And I think that, driving for efficiency to get it from 4 hours to an hour and a half is huge. And that's something that I know that I've tried to practice because my shoots were taking longer and longer and longer. An hour for hair and makeup, and then 3 and 4 and 5 hour shoots. And I'll keep going, but the clients are like, "Can I get out of here? I came in
I'm
for a
hungry."
passport photo." And I'm like, "No, 4 hours. I'm going out of here with one photo." So, getting that efficiency is great. I think all of us start at a different place in what we're comfortable with, right? So I will dive into a system and spend the next 15 hours trying to figure out how to get a checkout page going rather than being like, I'll just throw a PayPal button up there, right? The value for me is in the customer experience, having everything be seamless and perfect, but it never is. And so I find that there's this constant struggle between this perfectionism and the experience that I have as well as my clients have, and then automation and the infrastructure behind it all kind of coming together. And I think for me, I know that I'll address one thing at a time, and I'm constantly trying to patch this while I see that's cracking over there. And then I bend over to patch that and my butt hits a hole in the wall, and then I've got to patch that, and it's this Keystone Cops sort of mentality to my systems. So I think over the past year or so, and I know we've had a lot of conversations around this, as I step back further and further and further and get out of the weeds and look at it all, I'm starting to ask myself the bigger questions. Is this what I want? Are these the types of clients that I want? Is this the type of business that I want to run? Am I in the location that I want to be in, right? I mean, it gets bigger and bigger and bigger. It's not just lens choice and how many images they get. It comes down to, all right, what am I doing? What is this? Where is this really going? Rather than a week out, where am I going 3 years and 5 years? Am I building it the way that I want to build it? And I think a lot of us lose sight of that long-term vision when we're so bogged down in the little.
Right? Like,
I have a question.
Yeah.
Kat, have you always been a systematic and organized person?
Oh, I'm not organized.
I want to know more about how unorganized you are and how you defeat this. Because this seems to be Matt and I and like everyone else in the comments right now's problem.
So I live in a land of chaos, right? So there are just stacks and stacks of shit all over my world, on my desk, on my coffee table, on my kitchen, like everywhere. Even out here, right? Like I have a stack of books, right? Just chilling, right? Because those are the primary books that I work out of in my journaling space. But my husband, he calls me whirlwind. That's whatever, because I literally just sort of walk into a space and just go super cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. But in my brain, I can deal with the chaos because that abstract nature, like I can stay focused on it. I've been told that it's it's sort of a version of ADHD.
I was going to get there because I'm seeing this trend here.
Yeah. Because I can just like, I don't have to have things ABC color coded, la. I can but I am a logician. Like I'm a mechanic through and through. So I can take a look at a system as it stands and be like, hole. Because that's my neurodivergence is my superpower. But that being said, as you build team, like understanding that the more organized you can be intentionally requires that they don't have to be able to read my brain, because I'm really the only one that can read my brain. So being able to set up a system for other people to be able to support, because here's what's happening in my world is, yes, I'm in a photo studio. I have a branding network and I'm on the road a lot and I'm shooting there. And I want to continue to be able to shoot in my studio, but my studio is its own business. It's got to be able to generate revenue if it's going to be worthwhile, which means associate photographers. Okay, well, I bring in associate photographers. That's going to take time and energy from me in order to train them. And that training doesn't stop. It's not like that, okay, they know how to deal with clients now, cool, peace out, right? Like you have to have consistent accountability and training and mentorship for them, and then guidance and direction for your studio coordinator who's managing all of you, right? And calendars and activity and client communication and the whole 9 yards. So you have to stay connected to them. Well, now all of a sudden 40% of my calendar is sucked up just in accountability and training for these other people to make sure that the revenue that they're generating to make up for the revenue I can't create in the studio. Right. So it has to be organized, even if I look at it and I'm like, but why don't you just go do this thing? This is the problem. And they're looking at it and going, there's a problem? What's wrong? Right. So I'm learning how to be more organized. And I don't know if that answers your question at all, but yeah, I am not.
Oh, Matt, you're muted.
You, Matt.
I'm sitting here talking to a mute button. I never, you know me, I never mute, and there it is. So got a lot of comments coming in, and Sharon says the most modern I can get is Post-it notes. So that's Sharon's system.
Hey, whatever works.
And she also says, same here, procrastination through list building. And then Crystal feels the same thing, more time making lists and stressing out about lists than actually getting anything done. Oh God, it's the worst.
I call Matt out for that on a weekly basis.
At least. You're like, is it time for me to yell at you? I'm like, nah, you did it 2 days ago. Like, we can wait another 48 hours.
Just show me your list and you can hit yourself in the face.
Good Lord. So, one of the things that you mentioned too, Kat, and it brought me back to a lot of the corporate days and then consulting before I really got too far in photography was I was doing a lot of web design and consulting and system stuff for other people. And I hated training folks. Like, I love being an educator, but I hate wasting the time going through and training someone on stuff that they could probably do themselves. So to save us both time, I was recording videos, right? I'd go into their website and I'd screencast like, here's how you do this and here's how you do this, making them self-sufficient so that I don't have to fix everything all the time. And I found that has really worked as I start to work my systems, is recording these short videos. And so when I need to explain it to somebody, it's already there. And I'm like, hey, go watch this. And the thing about that I like is that it allows for me, like, and it's the same thing I do with clients, is try to explain as much as I can in video, because when I get to the conversation, I want it to be surgical and answering specific questions rather than going through the same thing over and over and over and over and over. So if I can get certain information out there, the bulk of it, and have people understand that, then I can answer more pointed questions. And I've always felt like that's an efficient way to go. It means that you always have to be updating stuff as well. So I just find that over time, it's allowed me to build this curriculum of how my business works or what I'm doing with a certain client. And I'm talking like when I'm consulting for them and whatnot. But right. Yeah, I mean, I know you said you recorded some of that for your associates. Do you find that that's a really efficient process of doing the recording and then revisiting it over and over?
So here's the thing. I would say that works. I have like Jordan building out videos, on Loom for, systems and processy stuff. But the only thing I share video on with clients, with portrait clients, is video around like behind the scenes.
Yeah, the BTS
right?
stuff. Yeah.
I don't want to be creating an archive of videos for prep and getting ready and rah, because then that lessens my ability to connect with them.
Sure.
So really the only interest I have in video with client work is behind the scenes.
Gotcha.
Yeah. Training, it's interesting. One of my associates, I require that my associates all have a subscription to, Portrait System for SBE. And I found out that one of the associates had let their subscription lapse. And like, we're not talking like 2 weeks or a month, right? We're talking about like 6 months. And I was like, is this why I'm spending so much time explaining 27 million different things? And they were like, well, what do I need, this library for? I have access to you. And I said, because that's where you learn the things. And when you have pointed questions, you have access to me. I am not interested in spending 47 hours every week teaching you something that's already at your fingertips that you can choose to learn at an accelerated or slower pace. That's all on you. Understanding when you have associate photographers also that they need to be able to generate a minimum revenue in order for their participation to even be worthwhile to your business is something to consider as well. It's not like, oh, yay, they made $2,400 sale. Great. How many times did they do that? Because if it's not regular or more or consistent, then it cost me more in training them because they're not watching videos that could be helping them improve their delivery and their experience. Isn't worth my time.
Becca, from the type of work that you do with a lot of commissions and working with a lot of, production houses and whatnot, do you feel like you have control of your systems, or are you at the mercy of other people as you do these commissions, right? Where you fit into their system? How do you manage that? Like, do you feel like you're in control most of the time with what you do, or do you feel like you're fitting into someone else's process?
Generally, I actually feel like I do have a lot of control. And I think that just kind of comes with freelancing. Like, say if I were actually an employee at a production house or at a studio or something, which is not something I'm opposed to. But that is then, working within the larger system built by whatever company. But since I just work freelance, I mean, I lay the groundwork. I write the rules. I, determine what this costs and how it's written and who owns what and when, how long it's going to take, what it's going to look like. Like, that's all on me. And mostly works pretty well. But then like I admitted a couple of minutes ago, I have found systems that aren't working within that greater system of having all the control. And I don't know if anyone else can relate to this feeling, but I can definitely really appreciate when working for other people who have that stuff in place already. Like where was Kat when I was a little baby photographer? Like, could I have come and get reamed out by you, please, and be taught how to be responsible? Like, I think there is a lot of value, though, when you have the opportunity to work within those systems created by other people, because it allows you to learn. It allows you to see how things work, or how they really don't work, especially in any sort of larger company beyond just the single person that is you. But for me, yeah, I have had to develop and refine everything through a lot of trial and error and study for myself. And that's where I'm at right now.
Well, and I think too, like, understanding, yes, there is benefit to working within somebody else's structure, because you do learn those lessons and where those pitfalls are. But the benefit is always, the house always wins, right? So when you're doing it for yourself, like, guess who's the house now?
Mm-hmm.
Right? So if your priority isn't at the front end of how all of those systems are built, regardless of what they are, whether we're talking about, sending an email or who owns what, right? At the end of the day, if your priority isn't, to your benefit, then it's not worthwhile.
Erica, who I view as one of these people that has amazing systems in place, and she's so repetitive. She's like, I'm in awe of Kat's team building and management. I'm still over here building systems that make me more self-sufficient. And if Erica's like just still building systems, there's very little hope for me.
Maybe we're good at this, Matt. Maybe we actually have it figured out.
Maybe that's it. Yeah, exactly. We work in this frenetic pace. I think, I'd love to understand, and I'll go first with this so you guys have time to think. I want to know what the strongest and weakest parts of your system you think are, right? So think about that for a second. I know for me, the strongest part, my systems, is my ability to adapt on the fly, and just kind of like, I know all the cogs in the machine, and if something is going wrong, I know exactly what valve to fix. Now, I have to go get the manual because I never read it the first time. And now I have to go through and look how to fix it. But I know it was working and I know what the problem is, right? So I know for me, the strongest thing is my ability to adapt very quickly, talk through, solve a problem very quickly. The weakest part is going back, revamping it, and then putting new processes and habits in place. No, I'm going to Becca first because I don't want to get chastised. Okay, Kat, go ahead.
Chastise
Oh
him.
boy.
I would actually say that is your strongest point as a human being, but that would be the weakest point of your business.
More.
Being a human being? Oh,
No, your ability to adapt,
Yeah.
right, is based on how well you know your systems and processes. But because you don't have that nailed down, nobody else can come in and be you,
no, absolutely right. 100%.
right?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
as your systems are defined for your business, there's not anywhere that can show anybody else how to do that thing and be as adaptable as you, because
Yeah.
there's no record of them anywhere,
Yeah,
right?
you know,
So
it's interesting you say that because I brought an intern in and was trying to teach her some of the stuff, and I realized that I just know the systems. My ability to teach my systems to somebody else, you default to the lowest level of your training, right? So I'm always like teaching the base level stuff without all of the nuance, because the nuance comes with experience and time, and you can say, well, this is most likely going to happen, but you don't know, right?
Right.
So being able to really have these things in place that are teachable. If you can teach it, then, well, thanks. Bottom of the mug. If you can teach it, then now I get it. Now I know why you don't use that mug. If you can teach it, then you really do have everything internalized and great. So, all right, that was my strongest and weakest. Becca, what are your strongest and weakest points? And it doesn't have to be something obvious, like,
I mean, I feel like the weakness definitely comes back to that organization and maybe the, potentially ADHD squirrel brain, where it's like, I know it all, and then one thing gets missed, and then everything will derail, or I just won't think of the importance of something. Though generally pretty streamlined. I don't know. That's a hard question, because if I felt like there was a weakness, then I'd want to go fix it and then not have to have it be a weakness anymore.
I didn't mean to put pressure on you. I was just trying to be introspective.
No, it's a good question. It's a good question. And I think maybe that's kind of the struggle of it is, exactly that, where it's like, okay, if I know that I have this pain point, if I know that there is this specific weakness, like this one I've discovered the past week, it needs to go be fixed and eliminated and added to that instinctual kind of reaction within my brain and that always perpetual list that's in my brain. So it no longer is a weakness. So the more I think about it, the more I'm gonna be like, oh crap, now I have to go fix this so it's not a problem anymore immediately.
Put it on the list. Kat, how about you? Strong, weak points.
I would say my strength is probably in being a logician and,
Yep.
being able to kind of bird's eye view systems. My weakness is probably I have an innate expectation of people to be as hungry as I am. And so when I don't communicate that a sense of urgency is required on X, Y, or Z, people go at their own pace. And I'm like, keep up.
Whoa.
Like,
Why are you so slow?
if you can't keep up with me, then this is a non-negotiable. Like, if you can't keep up with me, then just peace out.
Right.
But yeah, like, and appreciating that other people have their own pace and not everybody's like, I don't want to say as driven, but like on their own timeline. And so my communication of like, I need you to move and move now.
Right.
I sort of forget to deliver that. I just expect that everybody will go do the thing the same way that I would.
I think it comes down to values too. Oh, I'm sorry, Becca. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I have dealt with a lot of similar differences in expectation when dealing with other people. Like I just assume that this is a common sense way to react when you care
Yeah.
about something, right? And I have learned that's me. Like I'm the one who cares. I'm the one who's the workaholic, and not everyone else is going to feel that way. I mean, even on the client level, like this expectation that clients are going to understand something, but they don't. They don't. And so you have to work in that communication into the system itself and into even just the system and how you communicate as an individual. And that is tricky to figure out for sure.
I'm going to say hi to Trish. She popped in, Trish Beasley. Just popping in. She sucks at systems. 8 years to define a contract and payment process. I hear you, sister. Pretty sure Kat's going to yell at me next month. I think, Kat, you've developed this reputation for
Of a hand slapper. Like,
you're the tough love. I saw it in a meme. You're like an intensive care bear, right?
Yes.
You're like just very strong. Like I care, but I'm going to beat the care into you, right? Yeah. And it's an awesome thing that everybody recognizes. This is one of your huge strengths as a systems. I think that's why we come to you so often on this, because you do, as frenetic as you are, like the rest of us, you've developed this kind of organizational structure around it. And I think there's nothing there other than application of what you believe every single day. You're doing it. You're taking the action rather than me. I'm going to take action, but let me take action on my list and I'll eventually take action. So, Jean,
it's interesting.
Says, pace is impacted by environment. New teams sometimes take time to sync up when it comes to pace. Absolutely agree with that 100%. I don't think it's always a case of lack of drive or intensity. It may just be what they're used to. And I think this comes down to understanding personalities and, putting the right team structure together, whether it's a military, a corporation, a small studio, right? You're going to have personalities that we weren't all raised together. So there's going to be conflict. There's going to be agreement. But it's how you manage that and your approach to it that will dictate how that team functions. So, Kat, I know that you run a very efficient team. Becca and I work for ourselves, so there's not a whole lot of folks around us. So do you feel like you've gained any additional insight to yourself by managing these teams in your business? And has there been changes in your approach from when you were, I know the change in the business, but when you were an individual photographer, have your systems and everything now changed so much because you've got associates, or are you the same photographer with your systems and now they're just adapting to your process? Does that make sense? Or have things just morphed in time as you grow as a photographer and a businesswoman?
So the adaptability piece that we were talking about earlier, like that was me. I could turn on a dime. Yep. Right. And I could go out with that same sense of urgency and hunger and like go get shit done. Now, all that being said, I am a workaholic, like constantly. Business is running through my brain. So I have to know, like, no, Kat, you have to step back and not only do work, because it's for a long time, it was how I identified, was like, I'm in business, right? That's who I am. No, I'm Kat. I also happen to be the CEO of a business. But it's interesting. One of my associates, we had, this was maybe a year ago. Yeah, we had an event at the studio, and they've been with me now since like the end of 19. And then in 20, we went into COVID. And then in August, so in August of 2020, we lit a campaign up. Because after, drinking tequila in my backyard for 4 months, I was like, uh-oh. But they'd spent like that, 5 or 6 months really kind of like training, understanding the system, studying SBE, rah. And then we went into this campaign and shot like 46 people in 5 weeks between the two of us. And I shot right around like 28 or 30, something like that. But they were very like, holy shit, overwhelmed. And like, absolutely. Like that's a big number to crunch in 5 weeks. But they were saying, like when I started, the idea was to try and keep up with Kat. And now this year I'm trying to give excellent service, but at my pace. And now this year I'm like, okay, cool. I need you to double your pace. Because even if it's not quadrupled at my pace, I need you to at least double it, because your efforts and energy delivered still have to be worth my time to keep you on here. Right. Like, and if that's not acceptable, that's cool, fly, be free. Right. But the resources that I developed to create and sustain this business now move much more slowly, because it's not just me. It's not just my ability to turn on a dime, because I know everything, eyes shut, hands behind my back. Understanding that other people need time to be able to step into their power and their ownership of what makes their wheel spin. And Jean posted a comment, something about deploying humans based on their strengths is absolutely true. If somebody is, and this isn't like an extrovert versus introvert piece, this is more about what are they really great at? Because they might be an introvert, but guess what? Introverts are terrific at connection.
Yeah.
Right. So I'm still going to send you out into the world to go networking. But then I have, experience with other people where their strengths are really more in making deals and accumulating and watching that bottom line. So I'm going to make sure they're in the sales room. Right? We can send the studio coordinator out to network and build relationships with the community. So understanding that I have to be patient is probably the biggest lesson I've learned.
It's interesting. The team dynamics thing, as Jean talks about it, and Bassam just weighed in, the book Breaking All the Rules, all about using people where their strengths are rather than constantly expecting them to improve what they're not strong at. And I think that's been a huge shift in management over the past, I'd say at least 10 or 15 years. That I've seen as teams get built, that managers are now putting employees, rather than what they hired them for, into, wow, they're really good at this.
Right.
And they enjoy doing that thing and they're really good at it. I think when you have someone that is good at it and they enjoy doing it, let them run with that, even if it's not what you originally hired them for, because they're going to be insanely productive doing that, because it brings them joy and they're internalizing it and they're part of the process, rather than them coming to work in this new thing called quiet quitting, where you just kind of do the base minimum and you're kind of like collecting a paycheck, but you don't want to actually work very hard at it. And a lot of people find themselves in those positions. I think Breaking All the Rules is a great book. Anything by Patrick Lencioni. He's a big team management guy. Check out that. I know Donald Miller, I talk about him a lot about building teams and playing the strengths more so than just saying, all right, you're going to be a sales guy. You can't do that to somebody, right? Because they may or may not have those strengths. So, it's really
I've read Breaking All the Rules. I'm excited to check it out. Thanks,
and Bassam, if you have a link, or we can probably find it and put it in the Facebook group. But I think where it's a bit more difficult, he says, is when you only have a few people on your team, you kind of want them to be good at many things. I think it's the same thing when you don't even have a team and you look at yourself as a solopreneur. You're expecting yourself to be good at everything.
Because you have to be.
You have to be, but you can't be, right? So, and this is one of the things that I step back. I know how to build systems. I know how to build websites. I'm a very techie, nerdy guy. I don't like doing it anymore. It doesn't bring me the same joy. Because I can do it doesn't mean I want to do it. Do I have to do it? Yes. Do I want to do it? No. Does it fall to the bottom of the priority list? Absolutely. So I think we're constantly juggling, and this can be dangerous too, as a solopreneur, doing only the things that you want to do rather than the things you have to do, right? And I think a lot of us, me, when I speak about a lot of us, I'm speaking mainly about me, is I spend all my time and energy doing the things that I like to do. I like to build lists. I like to be organized. I like to have everything organized and neat around me. I don't like to do the things that cause me discomfort. Making phone calls or interacting with humans. I'm joking, clearly. But I think it's, I don't know if it froze or if it was just like a womp womp. That one didn't hit, but you guys were totally stone faced. I think, the things that bring me less comfort, clearly I want to avoid, but you can't do that as a solopreneur. So now you are got your fingers in all the pies. And the downside of that is that you're constantly pulled away from the stuff that makes the most sense for you to do at the time, whether you like it or not, right? Networking, reaching out to people, sending invoice, whatever it is. I find that my avoidance of that pain is an indicator to me of I've got to dive in a little bit deeper into that and just work out the system, just get it done, just do it, put it behind me rather than constantly avoiding it. Because now all I'm doing is creating other workarounds in my systems to work around that thing, right? It's compensating for a broken arm. I'm just going to use this one, and never learn how to use my right arm again. So, I think it's an interesting place to be, especially as a lot of us are building our own individual businesses, that we feel like we have to be good at everything. And there is a modicum of truth to that. But this is also the big part of outsourcing too. If it's something that is causing you a lot of pain, that you're not doing well and your business is suffering because of it, find a way. Maybe it's outsourcing, maybe it's learning more, but find a way to keep moving forward at the pace that you're moving and push that off to somebody else that is their skill and they love doing it. And they would be like, yeah, I want to do nothing but design PDF price lists all day long. Perfect. You're the best hire I've ever had. But I think we get caught up in doing all of these things and never shoring up the parts of our processes that really need to be shored up. So you can't just hire people to fix it. You have to look at yourself and actually figure out your process, what you're good at, what you're not good at, and what you're avoiding and what you're not avoiding.
Well, and here's the other side to that coin too, is just because you're outsourcing something doesn't mean you don't know how to do it.
Oh, totally.
Right.
Totally.
Even if you suck at it, you still have to know how to do it, because in order to employ somebody to outsource the thing, you need to know that you can trust them to execute in a way that is whole. And if you're just outsourcing it because you just don't even want to try, like, you're just setting yourself up to get ripped off.
No, I think, in our world, and Becca, I'm sure you have a parallel to this, is, outsourcing retouching, right? We know how to do it, but we realize how much time that sucks up. But you have people out there, Pratik, Dennis, and these guys, that's their job. They love doing that. And when you can communicate what it is that you need to those outsourced employees, then everything works because they're doing what they love. They're getting it done quick. You're avoiding the pain of doing it and you're still getting it done and you're moving forward. So yeah, I think I agree with you 100%, Kat, that you actually have to know your stuff backwards and forwards, so that you can outsource, so that not only what it is that you demand of that other person, but when things get sent back to you, you have an expectation of what they're going to look like. If you just send stuff out into the ether, well, you're going to get back what you get back. So it comes down to being able to know what your systems are, direct people appropriately, and that should bring you a little bit more success. Becca, do you have any parallels in your world for that?
Not that I utilize personally, but I mean, yes. The outsourcing, it doesn't even have to necessarily be something creative like retouching, something relevant to the art itself, but like things like social media or, writing copy. Yeah. You still have to be, kind of accountable for what goes out there. If it's under your name, you have to have an understanding. Yep, exactly. You're accountable for it. And, also, like you have to have a relationship with whoever you're outsourcing with, especially in the case of anything that's written or verbal, or that has to do with that kind of communication with clients. If they're expecting to be communicating with you, or communicating with your business or learning about your business, you have to have that back and forth with whoever you're outsourcing to. But I don't currently outsource things, just because I pretend that I have a handle on my life. But yeah, there's definitely a lot of things that I could lean into that. And depending how I'm able to scale over the next year, like with my new freedom, we'll see where that goes. But I still want to have, my finger in that pie. Like, I don't trust other people to speak with my mouth entirely, but it needs to be give and take and look at that. What is the beautiful term? Opportunity cost. Where am I wasting my time? Where am I wasting my money when I could just hand it off and let my brain go focus on the things that actually matter?
That's the term that I was looking for, and I know Bassam has used it over and over and over, the opportunity cost.
Yep.
And I couldn't think of that earlier. Thanks for bringing that up. All right, so we've got a couple minutes left. Guys, I can't believe we filled an hour talking about this stuff.
Hi, Nicole.
Hi, Nicole. So my facial expression tells me that I need a lot of work. So comments from the audience. I know you guys have been kind of out there. Is there one part of your system that you feel is weak or strong? Or has any of this conversation given you insight to say, all right, well, now I have to go back and check my own system? And I'll give you a concrete example. I started my gardening again this year. And so I grow Swiss chard and some lettuce and zucchini and cucumbers and all the basic home growing stuff. And I also have a free garden at my studio that is kind of like a food source for the community. Big garden, things grow, people can come by, leave their crops. They can take whatever's on the food stand. It's a pretty cool little system. Here at home, now I do the same thing. I put stuff in the ground, I water it, I weed it. Here at home, I grew a zucchini that was about this big. I was all happy. I made a zucchini. I went to the studio, and this was grown at the studio. That's a zucchini. So the systems are the same, but the environment is different. How's this for an analogy? The environment is different. So on the big garden side, there are a lot of people that are tending to it and always taking care of it. Here at home, it's just me. So I go out and I'm like, oh, I think I watered these plants a week ago. The overall system of growing and watering and choosing produce is exactly the same on both sides. But you've got people that are nourishing it and people like me that are just existing at home. You get a little zucchini or you get a huge zucchini. And I think therein lies my ending analogy for the day about systems and processes. When you have things in place that are working well and you've got a good team that's working well, the stuff that you can produce is amazing. You're still going to produce it if you're doing it yourself, and it's a hard way to go. It's just not going to be as efficient, and you're not going to have the volume at the end that you would hope for because you're pulled in so many different directions and your systems aren't working the way that they should. Every part has to be healthy, as Bassam says. So I think, with this, Gene's got I need to improve my systems to the point where I can rely to them on autopilot through periods of depression. Yeah, for some of us, that struggle keeps us held back 100%. Part of my system is showing up here and being as much part of this family as I can. We love you, Gene. You guys are amazing and always there for us. You know what? I'd like another paragraph and a half about how amazing we are, but we'll get to Erica's comment first. Becca's comment on lack of trust hits home for me. Basic editing and lawn moving is the only thing. Lawn moving or lawn mowing is the only thing that I've been able to let go of. Everything else I don't trust to get done the way I want it done, not without a level of hovering that makes outsourcing worth it. Yeah, and this is hard, man. When you have a system or you're creating things that you like and you're giving that up a little bit to somebody else, you have to know what to expect back. And there's this part of you that has to accept that it's not going to be exactly the way that you did it. But sometimes that's okay.
Okay,
Kat. All right.
I'm coming. And here's the thing, because I used to do that too, especially with retouchers. Like, God, why am I even sending this out if I'm just going to have to spend another 15 minutes per image fixing all of the things they didn't address? Here's the thing, though. It's about that training process. And yes, you do have to hover. But as a CEO, the end game is being able to review the work and send it back or accept it, right? Based on what was accomplished and being able to identify what wasn't done. What most artists struggle with is being able to let it go in the first place, because all of the time and energy it takes to train, insert position here isn't worth their 1 year goal for it, right? Most of us expect that if we outsource something, then we don't have to look at it. And that's not true. You have to oversee everything in your business. That doesn't mean you have to be the one extending backdrops. It just means you have to be the one that handles the quality assurance to know that it was done well. Like, that's the key. And when you can give yourself enough grace and time and space to allow that training to occur, it may not fix all of the pain and the struggle that you're experiencing immediately, but the pain and struggle that you will be taking out of your experience in 2 years, 3 years, and 5 years is going to be exponentially more worthwhile than you continuing to be the one extending backdrops.
And I think that's a great place to leave it. Becca, unless, did you have something to add right there?
No,
I think
we could leave your zucchini mic drop. It's good. But I mean, I've just been kind of ruminating a little on just how important like the skills that lead to good leadership are, even as an independent, sole proprietor, even if you're not necessarily outsourcing. Like, we got into that, being able to look at people's strengths, or, another is being able to inspire people to want to do well within their job instead of beating them down because they're not doing it good enough. Like, how can you apply those kind of skills to yourself? How can you apply those skills when outsourcing? Like, all of that, even without a team of employees underneath you, are important things to have to be able to run a successful business.
so. I think, as we close things down here, take a hard look at your system. Understand you. Be honest with yourself, right? So no one's going to come knocking on your door and give you a quiz as to how good of a leader you are. But take a look at your systems and think about what it is that you like to do, what don't you like to do, where are you strong, where are you weak, where can you outsource potentially, and before you do that, do you have the system in place to explain what you need and what you expect, right? So understand all of that first before you start making sweeping changes. I need to do this, or I need to buy that, or I need to start a new system or whatnot. Understand what you have first, and then start to really parse that out and say, where can I make these improvements and efficiencies? So, guys, thank you. We can continue this in the Facebook group. I'm happy to talk about all my misgivings and what I do poorly on a daily basis, or my zucchini, this one. So I think if you guys want to continue this conversation, do it in the Facebook group. We're going to be back on Friday. Hopefully Nicole will be here and we can talk more about visual literacy. But I like taking this little bit of a break and kind of getting to the real stuff that we all struggle with every single day. So until next time, Becca, Kat, thank you so much. I feel like, Kat, we just got like a one-on-one lesson from you, and it was fantastic.
I'll send you
Guys,
I'll give you my email for that invoice.
Yeah, I know, right? She's like, oh, I've already got that automated in the new system. Everybody that clicked on me is going to get an invoice. All right, guys, take care. We will see you on Friday, and have a great day. Bye, y'all.
Hey guys.